He tells you he likes you, and then suddenly disappears. One moment he's opening up to you, sharing something meaningful, something deeply personal, and the next he slips into silence like none of it ever happened. One day his words are warm, affectionate, and full of emotion, and the next he seems far away, cold, impossible to reach. And you sit there asking yourself the same painful question again and again. Is he genuinely falling in love with me? Or is he simply playing emotional games with my heart? But what if what appears to be confusion is actually something much deeper? What if sometimes when a man is truly falling in love, he doesn't move closer right away? He pulls back, not because he feels nothing, but because he feels too much. You know that strange sensation when your heart starts hoping for something real, yet your intuition quietly whispers that something feels off? When his actions no longer match his words, and the inconsistency leaves you emotionally exhausted, yet somehow even more attached to him. That emotional push and pull, that storm of uncertainty, can make even the strongest woman question her own reality. But if you're someone who has loved deeply, who has experienced both the beauty and pain of emotional connection, who still believes that authentic love exists beyond fear and ego, then what I'm about to share may help you understand things in a completely different way. There is a moment, subtle and almost invisible, when a woman realizes she's being tested emotionally. It doesn't arrive with loud arguments or dramatic confrontations. It happens quietly, almost silently. Suddenly, he stops calling as often. His energy changes. His texts become shorter, colder, more distant, as if he's slowly pulling away but refusing to admit it openly. You begin wondering if the closeness you once felt was only in your imagination. And inside that silence, something instinctive awakens within you, a quiet voice asking, "Am I truly safe here? Am I genuinely wanted? Or am I once again being emotionally manipulated?" What many people fail to understand is that a man who is falling in love doesn't always rush toward the woman he cares about. Sometimes he retreats quietly because love itself feels dangerous to him too. It shakes the foundation of who he believes he is. It reopens emotional wounds he thought were healed years ago. It awakens memories and fears he buried deep inside himself. Love challenges the identity he spent his whole life protecting. He tests not because he intentionally wants to hurt you, but because on a deeper emotional level, he's trying to see if the ground beneath him is stable enough to stand on. Without even realizing it, he may trigger your nervous system. He wants to know, often unconsciously, whether you can remain emotionally grounded even when he becomes distant. Can you stay calm when affection temporarily disappears? For a woman who has experienced toxic relationships or emotional trauma in the past, this feeling can feel painfully familiar. The inner child within her, the part that learned love always comes with uncertainty and instability, suddenly wakes up again. She doesn't just want reassurance. She craves it because reassurance feels like emotional safety. And this is where the true test begins, not for him, but for you. Because in those moments of silence, your mind becomes a battlefield. Did I do something wrong? Is he losing feelings for me? Do I need to fix this somehow? Do I have to prove my worth again just to keep someone close to me? But what if his silence is not rejection at all? What if it's a mirror, revealing the places where you still abandon yourself in order to hold on to love? What if this isn't a test of loyalty, but a test of your emotional strength and self-worth? A woman who truly values herself doesn't chase tiny crumbs of affection. She doesn't lose herself in panic the moment a man becomes quiet. She remains grounded, rooted not in his attention, but in her own emotional peace. She understands that real feminine power doesn't come from controlling another person's behavior. It comes from trusting herself deeply enough to remain calm, even in uncertainty. She doesn't beg for closeness just to soothe her fears. Instead, she becomes still and allows the truth to reveal itself naturally over time. And whether he realizes it consciously or not, he is observing more than your reaction. He's watching your emotional stability. He's paying attention to whether you can sit with uncertainty without betraying yourself emotionally. Do you choose dignity instead of desperation? Can you remain centered when things feel unclear? This is where genuine emotional connection is truly tested. Because real intimacy is not built on constant reassurance every second of the day. It grows through resilience, through quiet confidence, through the inner knowing that says, "I will be okay, even if things feel uncertain." And when you choose that calmness over panic, something changes in the energy between you. He feels it. He senses the peaceful energy of a woman who doesn't beg for love because she already understands her value. That kind of energy becomes magnetic. It's grounding. It's rare. It draws people closer naturally because it carries emotional maturity instead of emotional chaos. But the testing often doesn't stop there. The next challenge usually appears in a much quieter and subtler form, yet it reveals even more. This test is no longer about distance, it's about boundaries. There comes a moment when the line between affection and control begins to blur slightly. Maybe the two of you are laughing together over dinner, relaxed and playful, and suddenly he makes a comment that feels half joking but still hurts. Maybe it's about your past, your appearance, your personality, or how you seem too much or too intimidating. Or maybe his touch lingers longer than it should, crossing a boundary you never clearly gave permission for. And suddenly, a question rises inside you. Was that harmless teasing, or was it another emotional test? This is the second kind of test, one that goes far beyond attraction. He's unconsciously checking something primal and instinctive. Can you protect your own emotional and physical boundaries, even around him? Every masculine energy wants to understand the strength of a woman's boundaries because deep down, he needs to know your values are not easily negotiable. A man cannot build a truly emotionally safe connection with someone whose boundaries collapse under pressure. Think of it like building a house. A house without strong walls cannot survive a storm. In the same way, relationships without boundaries cannot survive emotional pressure. Whether he openly admits it or not, a man respects what cannot easily be manipulated. That's why feminine energy is not weak. It's receptive, intuitive, observant, emotionally aware, but also incredibly powerful. It notices subtle shifts in behavior. It senses tension beneath words. And instead of reacting from fear, it responds with calm awareness. True feminine strength doesn't fight desperately for control. It simply decides who receives access to her emotional world and who does not. This is where many women who have been emotionally hurt before face one of their hardest internal battles. Their desire for closeness clashes against their instinct for self-protection. Do you laugh something off just to avoid conflict? Do you remain silent because you're afraid of ruining the moment? Or do you pause, breathe, stay calm, and communicate your boundary with quiet confidence? Because the truth is, it's never only about the joke or the comment itself. It's about how quickly you abandon yourself emotionally just to avoid discomfort. It's about how often you silence your truth in order to maintain temporary harmony. Women who grew up in emotionally unsafe environments often learned that speaking honestly leads to rejection or abandonment. So they stay quiet, hoping love alone will fill the silence. But silence sends its own message too. It teaches people how much they can get away with. A woman with genuine self-respect understands that every uncomfortable moment becomes an opportunity to teach others how to treat her. She doesn't explode with anger, and she doesn't shrink into fear either. She simply responds with grounded honesty. That didn't feel right to me. And when she speaks with that calm certainty, the energy changes immediately. He feels it. The atmosphere shifts. In that moment, she becomes more than just someone attractive or desirable. She becomes someone worthy of respect. Someone who inspires emotional growth instead of emotional games. And even after that, another silence often appears. He watches carefully. He wonders whether that confidence was real or simply temporary performance. This is why the next test goes even deeper emotionally. He says less, maybe almost nothing at all. He simply observes who you become when he is no longer constantly feeding the connection with attention and words. There are few things more confusing than the silence that follows genuine vulnerability. One day he tells you how special you are, how easy it feels talking to you, how rare your energy seems to him. Then suddenly the next day he disappears into his own world. Not forever, but long enough for doubt to quietly enter your mind. Long enough for you to replay every conversation, every pause, every word you wonder if you said wrong. It's not loud rejection. It's quiet uncertainty. And sometimes quiet uncertainty hurts even more than obvious rejection. So why does he do it? Why open up emotionally only to pull away afterward? The truth is, when a man begins feeling real emotional attachment, when intimacy starts becoming genuine and deep, his instinct is not always to move closer immediately. Sometimes his instinct is to test whether the connection can survive emotional distance. He wants to know if he can fully be himself, fully be seen, and still feel emotionally safe. He steps back not to punish you, but to see whether you can handle uncertainty without abandoning your own emotional center. Because deep down, every emotionally wounded person fears the same thing. If someone truly sees me, will they still stay? And many men carry this fear silently for years. Society teaches them to appear strong, controlled, emotionally guarded. Vulnerability feels risky to them because it threatens the image they've spent years building. So when real love begins growing, fear often grows beside it. Love asks them to soften. Fear tells them to retreat. And somewhere between those two emotions, confusion is created. But this is why your energy matters so much. If you panic every time he becomes distant, the relationship slowly becomes driven by fear instead of connection. But if you remain grounded, emotionally secure, and deeply connected to yourself, something different happens. You stop reacting from wounded attachment and start responding from self-awareness. Instead of chasing reassurance, you observe reality clearly. Instead of losing yourself emotionally, you stay connected to your own peace. And strangely enough, that emotional steadiness creates safety for him too. Because when a man realizes a woman is not trying to control him, trap him, or emotionally manipulate him, his nervous system relaxes. He feels less pressure. He feels emotionally safer returning. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect or inconsistency forever. It simply means you stop abandoning yourself emotionally every time someone else becomes uncertain. That is the real transformation. The moment you stop making another person's behavior the center of your emotional stability is the moment your energy changes completely. You stop begging for clarity and begin embodying it. You stop chasing love and start attracting healthier connection naturally. And ironically, that is often the exact moment a man begins realizing your true value more deeply than before. Because love was never supposed to feel like losing yourself. Real love should reveal you to yourself more clearly, not make you disappear emotionally. And when you finally understand that, his silence no longer controls your emotions the same way it once did. Instead of fear, you begin responding with awareness. Instead of desperation, you begin choosing dignity. And that quiet emotional strength becomes the very thing that changes the entire dynamic between you both. Because for him, love is not only closeness, it is risk. The risk of being fully seen, of becoming vulnerable, of allowing himself to need someone. And inside that risk, something deeply transformative begins to unfold for both people. His withdrawal awakens every hidden wound living quietly inside you. The parts that fear abandonment, that long for reassurance, that still secretly believe love must somehow be earned through effort and sacrifice. But if in that moment you can remain connected to yourself, without chasing, without over-explaining, without begging for certainty or clarity, you pass the only test that truly carries meaning. Because real love does not grow through pursuit or performance. It grows through presence, through two people who can stand in uncertainty, remain emotionally open, and meet each other honestly without abandoning themselves in the process. It touches something ancient inside her. Old emotional scars she believed had already healed begin to reopen. The memories of being ignored, abandoned, ghosted, or left confused without explanation come rushing back like distant echoes from another chapter of her life. Her nervous system does not simply register distance. It reacts as though danger itself has returned. And if she is not fully conscious of what is happening within her, she reacts automatically. She begins chasing the connection, sending more messages, trying desperately to fill the silence, attempting to repair something that may not even be broken at all. That is the trap, the emotional cycle, the psychological pattern that keeps so many people addicted to uncertainty and emotional inconsistency. But for a woman who has truly stepped into healed feminine energy, silence begins to carry an entirely different meaning. It is no longer something terrifying. Instead, it becomes a mirror, a sacred pause, a place where she can breathe and remain grounded. She no longer rushes to fill every empty space because she understands something powerful. Not every pause is rejection. Not every silence means abandonment. She becomes the space itself, calm, centered, emotionally grounded, responsive instead of reactive. Not because she is detached or emotionally cold, but because she finally understands that true emotional safety does not come from controlling other people. It comes from leading and stabilizing herself first. A man who is truly in love, whether he consciously realizes it or not, longs to witness this kind of emotional strength. He wants to see what happens when he stops constantly feeding the connection. Do you collapse emotionally? Do you become confrontational? Do you slip back into old habits of overgiving and over-adapting? Or do you pause, regulate yourself, breathe deeply, and continue living your life without trying to prove your value to him? Through his quiet observation, he begins to notice more than your reactions. He sees your relationship with yourself. He notices your self-control, your emotional maturity, your ability to remain whole even when certainty disappears. And through witnessing this, something inside him slowly shifts. He no longer feels only attraction. He begins to feel emotionally safe with you. Because a woman who does not fall apart in his absence becomes a woman he can trust with his presence. Safety exists on many different levels, and sometimes the next emotional test does not arrive through distance at all. Sometimes it arrives through closeness, through emotional intimacy itself. He starts opening up slowly and carefully, and he watches closely to see how you respond to the parts of him he usually keeps hidden. Even the strongest man, once he truly starts loving, secretly fears being fully seen. It appears in the subtle change in his tone when he speaks about his father. It appears in the quiet confession that he is not as confident as people assume he is. Or in the vulnerable moment when he admits that someone before you hurt him deeply, maybe even damaged parts of him he rarely speaks about aloud. These are not casual confessions. They are emotional thresholds, fragile bridges he is attempting to build between you and the inner world he usually protects. Each confession carries a silent fear beneath it. Will you still see him the same way after hearing this? Or will you judge him, reject him, pity him, or quietly lose respect for him? For many men, especially those raised to believe vulnerability equals weakness, opening emotionally feels like standing exposed in the middle of a storm. The armor does not fall to impress you. It falls to test whether you are emotionally safe. He is silently asking, "Can you hold this part of me without using it against me later?" And this is where feminine energy becomes far more profound than simple softness or sweetness. It becomes sacred emotional presence, not reactive, not controlling, not rescuing, just deeply steady. A depth that listens beneath the surface of words. It is the quiet dignity of a woman who has learned not to panic in the face of pain, neither her own nor someone else's. But this is where things often become complicated. If you have spent much of your life being the healer, the fixer, the one who saves everyone around you in order to feel valuable, his vulnerability can become a dangerous emotional invitation. Without even realizing it, you slowly stop being his partner and start becoming his therapist. You begin carrying emotions that were never yours to carry. You start taking responsibility for wounds he alone must eventually face within himself. And he senses this immediately, not because he does not care, and not because he was never serious about you, but because emotional dependency begins replacing emotional partnership. Instead of feeling connected, he starts feeling emotionally trapped. A woman with genuine self-worth does not drown inside a man's pain. She does not inflate herself into the role of emotional savior. She listens deeply. She offers warmth, compassion, and safety, but she remains centered within herself. She does not turn his healing into her personal mission. Instead, she allows him to see himself more clearly through her acceptance without losing herself inside his chaos. And inside that space, something incredibly powerful happens. He starts realizing that love does not require the loss of independence. He begins learning that intimacy and boundaries can coexist together. That emotional safety is not the absence of discomfort or conflict. It is the ability to take responsibility without shame or judgment. He starts understanding that he can reveal his darkness and still be met with light. That he can expose his flaws without being consumed by them or by another person.